All right, hey everyone. This is Geometry, Chapter 8, Special Right Triangles. There are two types in this lesson. There are the 45, 45, 90 degree triangles, and then there's the 30, 60, 90. I know that you've received a video already on the notes and how to kind of go about these. So this is going to be a little bit of the notes and then a couple examples using what is going to be deemed the box method. So as you can see, we have some charts here. I'm going to show you another way to do the same process using the ratio. So the idea behind this lesson is, I know that you've learned Pythagorean theorem, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. You can find different side lengths of special right triangles, or sorry, of just right triangles. So now we have two specific types, meaning triangles that have exactly 45 degrees, and 90, like this one, that you have a ratio or a rule that you can follow to find all the side lengths. There's also another rule specifically for 30, 60, 90 special right triangles. So you have a 30 degrees, 60 degrees, and 90 degrees, and you'd have a different rule for that one, and you can solve these for any missing side lengths. So first things first, you have to have a right triangle, and for the 45, 45, 90, you have to have 45, 45, and 90 degrees. And the rule from the other video said that you could then use this rule to find the rest of the sides. I'm going to use a different method today. I'm going to use what I'm deeming as the box method, and I'm going to go through examples 1, 2, and 3 in the first section. Let me see if you can see this right here. Okay, so these are going to be the notes. So for number 1, it is telling me that there's a 45 degrees, a 90 degrees, and then a missing angle. Well, if you remember from a couple chapters ago, we said that there was 180 degrees in every single triangle. So if you were to take up the two angles, 90 and 45, add them together, and you subtract that from 180, you would have to have a 45 degree angle here. Whether that was written or not, you can find that. So I would just write it in. Then the next thing I want to do is show you like this chart. We're going to just use this one right here. So the chart is just meant to be another way of solving this if you didn't want to do so much mental math and just get it down on paper. I know some of you like to like write it out, and I think that was lost in the last video. So here's another method, a little bit of structure. It's a little bit of memorization, but after you kind of practice it, the chart should make it feel like an easier process. Across the top row, you're always going to list your angles. So there's only two options. You can either have the 45, 45, 90 degree option, or you're going to have the 30, 60, 90. Well, we're in the first section. You can tell it's like sectioned off. And so in this section, I look at the triangle. I have a 45, a 45, 90. You have to put the angles in the top row in order to use this process. So the first row is always going to be your angle measures, so inside the triangle. The second row is also going to be something that's memorized, and it never changes. So for the 45, 45, 90 degree, you're going to have a rule or a ratio, and it's going to be a 1 to 1 to square root of 2. That's just like this thing that it's a ratio, it exists. It's the way that the side lengths relate to each other, so that's never changing for the 45, 45, 90 degree. You have to put it in this order. So the last row is going to be our answers, which is also going to be our side lengths. So the outside of the triangle. If we look at the picture in number 1, there is an 8, there's an X, and a Y. So we have to put the 8 somewhere in here, and then the X and Y are other numbers we can figure out and get real numbers for. So the 8 is going to be across. I can put my fingers around the side that's the 8, and I can pull that back, and I'm pointing at the 45, so it's a match, like it's a pair. That side length, 8, goes with the angle 45. So we go to the 45 degree column, you slide down to the only open spot, we're gonna write 8. So the way that this chart's supposed to do is just supposed to help like the process, make it a little bit easier, even though it might be a little bit longer. You'll notice that the first two columns, 45, 45 degrees, 1 and 1, and then, hopefully you can guess that these columns have a pattern. They're exactly the same. So if there's 8 here, and 8's also gonna go here. And that's true always for the 45, 45, 90 degree rule. The first two columns are gonna be an exact match. So how we're using the box is going to be to figure out the missing spaces. And so we only have one left. So we are going to move from the first to the last space in this row. And we want to figure out, how are we going to get this? Well, this right here above it is the rule. It's like the rule line. All right. And we want to go from the first, right, the first compartment or the first row, and we want to get to this one. That's exactly the same two here. So we're just like bumping up a row. How do you get from 1 to square root of 2? Via multiplication. When we move to the right, move right, multiply. Multiply by what? Well, how do you get from 1 to square root of 2? You have to multiply by the square root of 2 to get there. So 8 times root 2. You can honestly just leave it like that. That's fine. If you didn't want to leave it like that, you can get your calculator out. You could do 8 times the square root of 2. If you don't know these buttons, just ask me, please. I'm happy to help during Zoom. And you can get this crazy decimal, and I'd be fine if you rounded this to a 11.3. That would be fine. So this is our answer row. These are all the side lengths they're asking us for. So let's go back to the picture, which is up here. And we already know this side's 8. That's what helped us do this problem. 8's across from the 45. Great. All right, this X right here, I put my fingers around that side. I figure out that it's across from the 45 again. Go to the other 45-degree column, and my answer, you just slide down to the answer row. So X is going to be 8. Finally, they ask you for the Y. The Y is the biggest side, so it's going to be hypotenuse. Hypotenuse is always across from the 90-degree angle. And so go to the 90-degree column, and we got 8 root 2. So that's going to be 8 root 2. How I write my answers, I can write them as roots, meaning leaving the radical, or you can change that to a decimal. So I would also accept y as a 11.3. Either one would be fine. So that's how you do number 1, okay? And that's with the chart. So we're going to move right along. I'm going to do 2 and 3. So I'm going to move over here now and take a look. We're now going to do number 2. Just write number 2 over here. This is from, again, from the class notes, which I asked you to do. Let's look at the picture. We got 45 degrees, 90 degrees, and if we did some math, we'd find that there's another 45 in here. Across the top row, you're always going to put your angles, and you're doing them from smallest to biggest. So we have our degrees. Across the second row is always the rule. This is just a thing that's memorized, and so the rule is just 1 square root of 2. Okay, it's a ratio, it's a rule, it exists, just something to memorize. So that's our rule. And now we need to fill in the new information. This is where like this changes, this last row changes per problem. You should see the other 2 rows did not. So in our new problem, we have an X, a Y, and a 25. The 25 is across from the 45 degrees. So if we use this method, you go to the 45-degree column, there's only 1 space left here, and you're gonna write 25. What do we know about the first 2 columns? Well, they're exactly the same. So if this one's 25, it's 25, all right? When we move to the right, you are going to multiply. Just writing that out. So we have to move to the right. And if we're moving to the right, we're gonna multiply. We go and we bump up exactly 1 row, and we look at what the rule says. Well, how do we get from 1 to square root of 2? What do we multiply 1 by to get square root of 2? You just multiply by square root of 2. And again, you can leave that as 25 root 2. So going back, these are the side lengths, aka our answers, because X and Y are on the outside of the triangle, and they're asking us for side lengths. Go back to the picture. We already know this one's 25, so let's move on. We got an X here, and it's across from the 90-degree box. So we go to the 90 degrees. That column, we slide down, and we know X is going to be 25 times root 2, or 25 root 2. I would also accept a decimal, so if you plug that in your calculator, 25 times the square root of 2, you would get, let me show you, 35.355, and so I would accept 35.4 for that one, because you're rounding to the 10th. So let's write that, 35.4. All right, and then the other part, we got Y. Y's a side length, it's across, so it's a match with angle 45. You go to the 45-degree column, and we get 25, and so those are gonna be our X and our Y. And that's what we get. I'm gonna kind of highlight our answers here. All right, we have 1 more. We're gonna do number 3. So I'll use over here. number 3. Number 3 is a 45 and 90, and like I said before, they're just trying to be a little tricky. You can just do the math and make sure that that's supposed to be at 45 degrees. So across the top, we're writing 45, 45, and 90 degrees. Second row, 1, 1, square root of 2. Again, no questions asked. Those are just, that's what you fill in. That's the rule that goes with those angle pairs. And now we need to look at the picture to be able to fill in, all right, what are the side lengths? What do we know and what do we have to find out? So in this one's different actually, because the 19 that they gave us on the outside is across from the 90 degrees. So for the first time in our examples, we're now gonna write the 19 in the 90 degree column because it was across from that one. And now we need to move to the left. And you notice that like I keep starting or ending, starting or like kind of going to and from the 30 degrees first. I'm sorry, the 30 degrees, the 45 degrees, like this column, first column. If we didn't start there, I'm trying to go there first. So we are trying to figure out what goes here, and we know there'll be a match. Well, just like with everything else, adding is the opposite of subtracting. Multiplying is the opposite of division. And so if we are multiplying when we go to the right, if you are going to the left, you are going to divide. Go left, divide. Move right, or go right is multiply. So we are now dividing because we're going the opposite way. Well, what are we dividing by? So we are trying to go from this last spot to the first spot, these two places. If you look at my hands, we're going to bump up one row and we're going to take a look at that. And we have a square root of 2 and we're trying to get 1. So how do you get from square root of 2 to 1? Well, in math, anything divided by itself is just 1. So square root of 2 divided by itself is going to get us 1. And so that's the rule. You are dividing by the square root of 2 to get to this column. So we are dividing by the square root of 2. And so you can write this as 19 over the square root of 2. A lot of people don't like it written that way. So I'm okay if you do some algebra to simplify that, if that was something you did in the past. Some of you might not feel comfortable with that, so if you want, you can use the calculator and you can see I am plugging in 19 divided by square root of 2. I'm hitting enter, and you're going to get 13.435, blah, 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 and so you can round that to 13.4. So I'm okay if you leave the decimal as 13.4. All right, well, we know these two columns are going to be the exact same. And so there we go. We got 13.4. We now need to look at the picture, and we're going to put our answers in. So let me highlight the answer row. Come back up to the picture, and we have y is across from the 45, so 13.4, and y, x and y are both across from the 45. All right, so that is how you use this chart for the 45, 45, 90.